All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Sovereign State Show. I'm your host, Brandis P. Bonos. I got a big show coming up for you guys today. Thank you so much for being here. In case you guys noticed, I did change the name of the show. It is now going to be referred to as the Sovereign State Show, no longer leading the charge. I decided to make this decision specifically because I believe that sovereign state has a more political and a more professional tone. And everything is about the approach. Everything is about the delivery. Everything is about the marketing. So I figured changing it to something that had a better ring to it, the Sovereign State Show, as opposed to leading the charge, which is kind of abstract, it's kind of vague. Sovereign State kind of denotes a kind of political and statecraft, kind of like aura, I guess, for lack of better words. So that's the reason why I decided to make that decision. The show is, from here on out, going to be referred to as the Sovereign State Show, okay? With that out of the way, by the way, quick side note before I get into the news. The channel name currently reads The National Interest, or just National Interest. And the handle is the Sovereign State. The reason why the show name says National Interest is because initially I wanted to name the show The National Interest. But for whatever reason, YouTube wouldn't let me do it. YouTube would not let me change the name of the show to The National Interest. Maybe there's another show titled The National Interest. Maybe it's for IP reasons. I have no idea. Maybe somebody else already has that name. I don't know. But I couldn't name the show The National Interest, which is what I initially wanted to name the show. So I decided on the Sovereign State. So in 2 weeks, when I have the opportunity to change the name of the channel again, I'm going to change it to the Sovereign State. So just temporarily, it's a bit confusing, but anyways, that's that. You get the idea. So today we're going to be talking about Trump deploying the military, or potentially deploying the military to New York City and Chicago. And we're going to talk about some other things as well. We're going to talk about the military-industrial complex as well. We're going to talk about China. We're going to talk about Taiwan. But before I get into any of that, the first thing I want to talk about is the Rajah Jackson situation. If you guys haven't seen it already, I'm sure most of you have probably seen the video. But if you haven't seen it yet, there is a video of Rajah Jackson, who is Rampage Jackson's son. Now, Rampage Jackson is a professional fighter, an ex-professional fighter. He retired from the UFC. I don't know how many fights he won. I don't know if he ever had a title belt. I'm not sure. I'm not aware of that. I don't really follow the UFC. But he has a son, and his son is also trying to become a UFC fighter, a professional fighter. Now, after Rampage Jackson retired from the UFC, he started doing live streaming. And I don't know how long the gap in between his retirement to his first live stream was, but he is live streaming now. And he's doing features with all these big live streamers. Sneeko, Kai Cenat, or no, not Sneeko, but I know Sneeko, and I know Neon for sure. I don't know about Kai Cenat, but definitely Sneeko and Neon, and I'm sure a couple other people. But he also has his own Twitch page or Rumble page or whatever. So he's doing this live streaming thing, and he's got his son live streaming with him, and his clips are going viral everywhere. His clips are going viral on TikTok, they're going viral on YouTube, they're going viral on Instagram, they're going viral on X, and they're gaining a lot of popularity, they're getting a lot of traction. Because Rampage Jackson is, in his defense, he's a funny guy. You know, he cracks a lot of jokes. He breaks his son's balls. He makes fun of other people. He's politically incorrect. You know, he makes these sexual overtures, these sexually incorrect comments towards women in the public space. You know, very provocative, very unprofessional, very raunchy kind of guy. And I guess there's a kind of appetite for that sense of humor. I don't find it funny. I don't find it entertaining, but a younger audience does. That's the appeal. To see this guy kind of go around breaking people's balls in public. I personally think it's annoying. I think it's low-hanging fruit. But other people think it's funny, and it brings in money, and it brings in views. So anyways, he's doing this whole thing. He's going around. He's messing with people. He's, cracking jokes and whatnot. He has this son. His son's name is Raja Jackson. And he brings his son on the stream, and his son's, cracking all these jokes and all this kind of stuff. So anyways, that's the whole dynamic. They're streamers, right? And they go around. They do stuff in public. They look for people to mess with. They look for fun. That's what streamers do. And I think the entire streaming culture is cringe. I think it's toxic. I think it's stupid. But other people seem to find it funny. So that's their prerogative. Anyways, as it pertains to Raja Jackson. So about 4 or 5 days ago, Raja Jackson, with his entire camera crew and all these people who are holding up his cameras, he goes to a professional wrestling event. And while he's there, he goes backstage. Cameras and everything, got this entire crew with him, got these microphones out. He goes to the backstage, and he's meeting up with all these wrestlers before the fight actually starts, or before the match actually begins. He's talking to these guys, he's fraternizing or whatever, and him and another guy get into an altercation. Now, apparently this guy's name is Psycho Stu, and Psycho Stu is an ex-US military veteran. Apparently this guy served in Iraq or something like that, and he has PTSD. And so as a means of coping with his PTSD, he does wrestling in front of an audience because apparently it soothes him. Apparently it gives him purpose. So anyways, Stu comes up to him while they're arguing, while they're going back and forth, and he grabs this prop beer can and he smashes it over Raja Jackson's head. Now, Stu was under the impression that because this guy has cameras, he has microphones, he's got this whole crew with him, he's cracking jokes, he's messing with people. He's under the impression that this is a bit, that this is being recorded by the people who are running the whole operation. They're trying to sell it. So he smashes this beer can on Raja Jackson's head, and the kid doesn't find it funny. He actually gets rather upset about it. And Stu apologized. He tried to make the situation right. He tried to correct it. He tried to explain himself. And at first, Raja Jackson was reticent. He felt disrespected, humiliated. You get the idea. But after a couple minutes, eventually they squashed the situation. They squashed the beef. And all was good. They shook hands. They spoke. He said, it's all good. We're cool, yada, yada. So seemed like the situation was over. Seemed like the situation had been smoothed over. No longer a problem. Well, fast forward 30 minutes, he's sitting on the side of the ring with his phone in his hand, reading the chat. And his chat is provoking him. His chat is saying, you got bitched. He played you. He made you look weak. He made you look like a sucker, right? And the entire chat, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids are in there provoking him, calling him the B word, saying he's a sucker, a punk. And so Raja Jackson says, all right, I'll show you guys something. And the worst part about it is he actually premeditates it. He says he's going to go into the ring and attack this guy. He's going to get his lick back, even though he explained the situation, even though he already apologized, even though they both shook hands, he wanted to get his lick back. So he goes into the ring. After Psycho Stu takes down his opponent, he slides into the ring, slides under the bottom rope, goes up to him while his back is turned, grabs him from the waist, picks him up about 5-6 feet in the air, and just suplexes the crap out of this guy. Suplexes him on the back of his head, where his occipital lobe is. Knocks the guy unconscious immediately. Now, up to that point, many people are saying that it was instructed by the people hosting the event that he goes in there as a part of the storyline, as a part of the plot. He goes in there, this guy backstage, they're messing with them, they're punking him. You got the Twitch chat provoking the whole situation, so they want to capitalize on that. So apparently the people running the whole operation are telling him to go in there and pick up this guy to exaggerate the storyline. Well, he goes in there, picks this guy up, slams him on the back of his head, knocks him unconscious, and then after that, he proceeds to pummel the guy. He proceeds to punch him across the face 22 times. I counted it specifically. I watched the whole video. Punch this guy in the face 22 times while he was unconscious. And you have to consider the fact that this guy, Rajah Jackson, this dude is 6 feet tall, at least 200 pounds, shredded. This dude's a monster. He's a professional fighter. And while he's punching this guy on the ground, he is loading up the punches. He's literally turning his back. He is rolling his shoulder and boom, 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 while the guy is laying on the mat. He is punching him with as much power as he possibly has after the guy is already unconscious. So you must consider a defenseless opponent who's knocked out being punched by a 200-pound beast, a professional fighter who is putting full force behind every single punch. And the worst part about it is, after pummeling this guy, and all the other wrestlers hop into the ring to stop him, he flees the scene. He flees the scene, he exits the arena, he's walking down the street, and while he's on stream, he's still saying, they can't F with me. I'm sick of people playing with me, man. I'm sick of people trying to play with me and play with my name and punk me. So this guy is like obviously an unstable freak. Like this guy it's savage behavior. This guy is unstable, mentally unstable, emotionally unstable, immature, probably has some form of trauma, probably he's got something going on. Because that's not normal behavior. After you knock your opponent out and leave them defenseless and limp, most people, they might punch 1 or 2 times, but to completely unload a salvo of 22 fully loaded up punches is actually insane. There's absolutely no defense for that. That is like barbaric behavior, effectively. And of course, everybody on Twitter, they're making it a race issue. They're saying the guy is black, the victim is white, yada, yada, yada. And of course, you're going to have that. That's a part of the equation. That's to be expected. But what I really want to focus on here is the fact that the big divide here seems to be whether or not this kid should go to jail, whether or not this was attempted murder, aggravated assault, was it motivated by race? And my opinion on the situation is actually a little bit different. My opinion is that this guy, Rajah Jackson, he has a dad who's a complete idiot. His dad is a complete idiot. His dad is, well, maybe I shouldn't say an idiot, but he's not the brightest guy on earth. We'll just put it that way. His dad is not the brightest guy on earth. He's a womanizer. He seems a bit narcissistic, and he constantly belittles, he constantly punks his son in this kind of diminutive, condescending way. So his son obviously has an ego problem. Not only that, his mom is dead. His mom died while he was a kid. So his mom is dead, his dad is abusive, and his dad is a womanizer. His dad has a Japanese side chick who he never married but had 2 kids with. So this whole entire dynamic is completely wild. Not to mention this kid is a professional fighter. He's a professional fighter. Who knows how many times he's gotten knocked upside the head? If not by other people in the ring, then by his dad. So this kid's getting knocked upside the head. He's got trauma from his past. His dad is a horrible, we'll just put it this way. His dad is a horrible example of what a father should be. And of course, the outcome of that, ego issues, mental problems, probably some form of CTE, PTSD, whatever, something else he's got going on from years of fighting, desensitization towards violence, led to this very moment where you have this emotionally unstable guy who has all kinds of anger issues, roaming free in society with 2 lethal weapons, his hands, waiting for the moment that he gets to capitalize on his anger, to take out his resentment on someone. That's what it looks like to me. And of course, people are going to say it's a race thing, it's a genetic thing, it's X, Y, and Z, but look, people are always going to spin it that way. And I've come to accept that. There's really no way around it. And on some level, when you do see a pattern, this amount of times, this kind of brutality, this kind of hostility, this kind of disregard for the well-being of other people, it does make you think maybe it is a cultural issue. And I could see that argument. And I think that this is very interesting because I was actually talking to Tariq Nasheed 2 nights ago. And I was in his Twitter space and we were going back and forth. We argued for about an hour and a half about the whole situation. And this guy was defending him. Or at least he was downplaying the situation. And many of the people in his audience were doing the exact same thing. Many of the people in his audience were saying that, well, you know, the white guy, Psycho Stu, he did hit him with the prop can, yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, this is what it comes down to. Regardless of whether he hit him with the prop can or not, regardless of whether or not he started the fight, the fact of the matter is this. He explained the situation. He apologized. Rajah Jackson accepted the apology. He made it seem as if there was an understanding. Then he waits 30 minutes, premeditates his revenge after accepting the apology, slides into the ring, attacks this guy while he's not even looking, knocks him unconscious with a suplex slam, and then proceeds to wallop him with 22 shots. How do you possibly defend something like that? And that's been my criticism. That's been my point. And a lot of black people are defending this because there's this kind of stubbornness, there's this kind of mentality of it's us versus them, which is blinding them from seeing the reality of the situation. This is indefensible. And that's really my problem. Because when you see this kind of defense, when you see people launching a defense for somebody like that, who's clearly in the wrong, it makes every one of us look bad. It's really that simple. You gotta hold people accountable, especially in a situation like that. And I get it. Look, you get the media. The media's gonna spin it one way. They're gonna say it's genetic. They're gonna say it's black culture. They're gonna pull at that thread whenever the opportunity presents itself. That's just the way it is in America. There's race politics, religious politics, sex politics, and the people in the media will exploit that at every single opportunity. This is like obvious. This is like elementary, rudimentary stuff. It doesn't take a genius to understand that. But outside of all that, there has to be a willingness from the black community to hold these people accountable every single time. There just has to be. There's no two ways about it. There's no way of slicing that. In my opinion, this guy has to go to jail. I mean, he actually needs to go to jail. That is insane. And it isn't just simply the fact that he walloped him and had no regard for his well-being or his safety, left him in critical condition. It isn't just that. That's bad enough as it is. That's already inexcusable. But it isn't just that. It's the fact that afterwards, he didn't even seem remorseful about it. He was so caught up in his own anger and pride and resentment that it seemed as if this was him taking out an opportunity, or taking the opportunity to justify a desire and impulse to be violent. That's what that looked like. Very concerning stuff. Because even afterwards, when he was on the phone, and this guy, his manager or his buddy or somebody on his team is calling him and saying, hey man, you just knocked this guy unconscious, he's not waking up, you know, like you can't do stuff like that. The best he has to offer is, my bad. And then he hangs up, and then he goes back to whining and complaining about feeling like he's being disrespected by the whole world. That's dangerous. That is actually a threat to society. You cannot have people like that walking around on the streets. They are a ticking time bomb. They are a tinderbox. So my opinion is, look, I don't know if this is attempted murder. I wouldn't consider it that. But this is definitely a kind of aggravated assault, a premeditated, aggravated assault with a lethal weapon, whatever they want to classify it as. But Lord have mercy. Anybody defending this, and of course they're disproportionately in the black community, I want to talk to those people specifically because there's black people who are saying that he was in the wrong. There's a lot of black people who are defending Rajah Jackson. And we got to move into the news, but I will just say this before I move on. Those people are the precise reason why this entire stereotype about black people having a kind of cultural stubbornness unwillingness to take accountability, why that's even a thing, why that rhetoric, why that sentiment even exists. Because rather than just calling the guy out for being a maniac and almost killing someone, rather than focusing on that, you would rather focus on the 5 seconds that took place 30 minutes prior to the incident where the white guy did something that could be conceived as disrespectful and then apologize for it. You'd rather focus on that. That kind of religious defense of anything wrong that a black person does is going to hold us back. We got to hold people accountable. That's just how it is on all sides. So that's my take on that. Ridiculous situation. Put this guy in jail. You know, guy needs help. Dude needs help. Like, just on a personal level, he needs help. And that's that. And you see the same thing in a lot of these other places. Chicago, where you got this group of black kids. You got this one kid in the bathtub. And I saw this video on Twitter the other day. And I'll just say this real quick. I saw this video on Twitter the other day. And there's a group of black kids. It's 4 black kids, and they're in a bathroom at a party or something like that. Somewhere in Chicago. Somewhere in the hood. And they got this black kid who kind of looks like a nerd. I don't even know what the whole situation is. Maybe he's linked to some gang. I don't know. But dude looks like a nerd. He's defenseless, sitting in the bathtub. And you got one black kid with the phone recording the whole situation. You got another black kid aiming this pistol with a switch on it at the kid in the tub. And then you got their friend who's sitting on the counter watching the whole situation. So the guy who's recording, he's keeping all this on footage. The guy with the gun turns to the guy sitting on the counter. He says, "Hey, man, pistol whip him. Whip him with the glizzy." All of it is on camera. Every second of the interaction is on camera. His buddy grabs the glizzy, and he just pistol whips the crap out of this kid in the tub. And they're all laughing about it. Like this is a normal daily thing. To me, this is not even something you can blame on poverty. Like it's one thing to be poor and to commit crime. It's one thing to be poor and to rob someone. It's one thing to be poor and to steal from Target or steal from the liquor store. It's one thing to steal from people, but it's a whole different thing. It's a whole different level of sadism and psychopathy and lack of regard for others to humiliate someone on camera by whipping them with the pistol. And these kids are 13, 14 years old. These are high school kids. Inexcusable. And that's the reason why all these stereotypes exist. It's got to stop at some point. And this is a good opportunity to pivot here because, listen, Donald Trump is talking about deploying the military to Chicago. And let me just read this. This is from KCRA. This is from Matthew Kudahay. It says, President Donald Trump indicated last week that Chicago could be the next U.S. city targeted for a federal troop deployment, mirroring similar actions already taken in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C. On Monday, Trump doubled down on the potential of sending the U.S. military to Chicago, though he stopped short of making any guarantees. He says, quote, "They need help. We may wait. We may or may not. We may just go in and do it," which is probably what we should do, Trump told reporters in the Oval Office. The Trump administration has cited high levels of crime and lack of immigration enforcement as reasons for deploying federal troops. However, officials from D.C., Los Angeles, and Chicago have pushed back against those claims and have voiced strong opposition to Trump's actions. So there you have it. So Trump is talking about deploying the military to Chicago. Here's the thing. I live in L.A. I know what it's like. I know what Compton is like. I know what Watts is like. I know what parts of Long Beach and San Pedro are like. It's not a place where you can just walk around at night and feel safe. You have to have a weapon. I have to walk around with a knife on me because I don't know what might happen if I turn on the wrong corner. There might be a group of people hiding in there waiting to lunge and attack me. You don't know. It really is a zoo out here in LA. You go to a liquor store, a couple guys walk in, they smell like weed, they got guns. You don't know. All right? That's the kind of stuff that happens over here. And the people in DC have said the exact same thing. There's crime, there's violence, it's unsafe, it's dirty. People have no regard for others. And then Trump deploys the military and there's no murders for 11 days straight. And everybody is thanking him. Everybody is happy that Trump is actually doing something to solve the crime problem. We've been talking about this in America for the past 30, 40 years now. How crime is ridiculous here. You can't walk around anywhere. In China, they don't have these problems. In Tokyo, they don't have these problems. In the UAE, they don't have these problems. In Saudi Arabia, they don't have these problems. Because if you do something, if you harm someone, if you kill someone, they're going to identify you immediately. The state is going to be all over you. It isn't just some local municipality where you got to get all these warrants and you got to go through all this law and procedure and you got to file a report. You don't go through all that. The government is on you and they will pursue you with everything they have, with all their resources. The same is true of the police. The military and the presence of the military creates a kind of order, just ontologically, that is not created by random police, effectively government employees with guns and badges. So he's talking about deploying the military to Chicago. And of course, everybody on the left is saying, well, that's unconstitutional. Well, that's against the law. Well, that's wrong. Well, this is tyranny. This is totalitarianism. Trump is an authoritarian. And it's like, look, you look at LA, you look at Chicago, you look at New York City, you look at DC, you look at Houston, Texas, you look at Atlanta, you look anywhere, any city run by Democrats, majority black, majority Hispanic populations, they're horrible places to live. They're unsafe, they're dirty, there's crime. And within 11 days, not even 2 weeks, Trump puts the military in DC, not a single murder. Not one murder. And it's like, look, the Democrats always talk about black people this, black people should vote for us, we support black people. They don't give a damn about black people. They never have. Black people are getting slaughtered on a daily basis in Chicago. What has a Democratic politician done to stop that? Not a single thing. They don't care. They bring in all these immigrants. They bring in people who don't assimilate. It's a zoo over there. It's a complete zoo. The West Side, the South Side, they're run by gangs. This is effectively what happens. Chicago is a perfect case study. Chicago is effectively like every province of Mexico. In Mexico, the only places that are not controlled by the cartel is Mexico City. Why? Because Mexico City is a federal city. It's controlled by the federal government of Mexico. Everything else is up for grabs. Everything else is controlled by the cartels. The Sinaloa cartel, the New Jalisco cartel, Los Zetas, the Pacific Sur cartel. All these different cartels effectively run the country, which is why we have so many immigrants here from Mexico. It's a narco state. That is effectively what the South Side and the West Side of Chicago have become. They're ganglands. They're run by gangs. And you go on YouTube, you can go back 10, 15, 20 years, you go on YouTube. It's ridiculous. I mean, they have full-length live streams uploaded from Instagram of these gang members from the BDs, the GDs, O Block, FBG, STL, whatever, all these different gangs. And these kids are in these videos, they're throwing up the gang signs, they're speeding, they're shooting at people on Instagram Live, they're doing vlogs in the hood vlogs. I mean, literally you can see these guys' addresses. They're posted up right by a street sign. There's literally signs of the street names on every single block in Chicago. They're posted up on the block, standing in front of these street signs, recording a music video for millions of people to see. I mean, you literally know exactly which street these guys live on. And they just run free. They literally roam the city like nobody's business. They steal cars. They loot buildings. They kill each other on a daily basis. They litter. They're a complete parasite to society. Every single one of them. And they are proud of it. They broadcast it. They rep it. This is my hood. I'm BD. I'm Taro City. I'm Taekwon World. Okay, well, if you're so proud of it, why don't you go do that in jail? Why don't you go click up with all your Taekwon World homies in jail? Why don't you go bang it out in jail? How about that? You know, none of us should have to live this way. Nobody should have to deal with this. You take the metro in DC. I lived in DC for 2 years. You take the metro in DC. It's like a third world country in there. It smells like piss. It smells like weed. It's dirty. People are mean mugging you. You got all these homeless people on there. You got all these gang members on there. People who don't even have their face showing. They got on masks and you know they're wearing these Nike Techs and all. It's craziness. It's wild. And it's like these people are easily identifiable. You know exactly where they live. They're in the music videos. They're posting their address on the social media. The fact that all these people are not in jail is wild to me. And the reason why is because they're more interested in monitoring political dissidents, like myself. If I say something wrong on the internet about politics, I become an enemy of the state. I become an enemy of the state. I don't have any legal firearm. I'm not robbing people on a daily basis. I'm not shooting people. I'm not a menace to society. I am a law-abiding citizen, and I have never committed a crime in my life. Perfect record. But I become an enemy of the state because I point out things about Israel and the neocons or whatever. The double standard is actually astounding. And it's like, look, if Palantir is going to sign contracts with the Chicago Police Department, if the Chicago Police Department is going to justify a $2 billion a year annual budget, you better be locking people up. You're using taxpayer money, you're getting government subsidies, whatever. You're signing contracts with the Pentagon, you're signing contracts with AI to download people's data, download people's information, spy on people, put all these security cameras on every single block with AI inside of it that can analyze the way people walk, their walking patterns, okay, and facial recognition on the security cameras, and robot dogs, and self-driving cars that have, you know, security cameras on them as well. It's like, look, if you're going to do that, and you're going to lurk and spy on the good people, the people who aren't committing crimes, you need to also be using that for the people who are actually not following the law. The double standard is actually astounding to me. And look, I was watching, you know, Nick Fuentes' show last night or 2 nights ago, and it might sound like I'm echoing a sentiment because in large part I am, but he was talking about how the police are not your friend. And they really aren't when you think about it. The police are not helping you. The police, in many respects, are actually trying to throw you in jail. If you defend yourself, if you get attacked by a homeless person, if you get attacked by someone and you hit them with bear mace, or you punch them, or you hit them with an object to defend yourself, or you throw a rock at them, the police are going to bring you in for questioning. The police are going to interrogate you. They're going to ask you for information. They're going to try to get you caught up. It is absolutely insane. It's insanity. Something has got to change. The crime problem is a real problem. It is actually a problem. And it's just the filth, the crime, the poor public transportation. It's indefensible. In a country as great as the United States, it is actually indefensible. So if Trump wants to deploy the military to Chicago, I think he should do it. And the same is true of New York City. Nobody should have to live like this. Nobody should have to live like this. None of us. We could have paradise in the United States if we could deal with this problem. It is literally a thorn in our side. It's ridiculous. I promise you, Trump puts the military in the south side of Chicago, the west side of Chicago, crime rate drops by 150% in 5 days, guaranteed. It's daily over there. Carjacking, shootings, stabbings, robberies, burglaries. It's ridiculous. It is effectively like a cartel state over there, effectively. Anyways, so that's that. I wanted to briefly touch on this though. insofar as China and Taiwan are concerned. Look, the whole multipolar thing, people are talking about multipolar world, the rise of China, the rise of Russia, and all that kind of stuff. We've been hearing about this for at least the past 2-3 years now. Mearsheimer, Jeffrey Sachs, Judge Napolitano, all the people he brings on, Scott Ritter. People have been talking about the rise of China, the arms race, the Cold War with China for a long time now. And everybody's worried about it because China controls 29% of the world's supply chains. They control almost 1/3 of the world's supply chains, and they produce 50% of the world's goods, something ridiculous. Okay, so China is a incredibly powerful and economically productive country. And the Pentagon is trying to figure out ways to limit the rise of China. Here's my thing. Why on earth should we do that? Put Taiwan aside for the second. We'll come back to Taiwan, but just put Taiwan to the side. In the 70s, there are leaked transcripts of Richard Nixon talking to Donald Rumsfeld. And he's talking to him about why the only places on earth that matter are Japan, China, Russia, Europe, and the United States. And this was at a time when Donald Rumsfeld, who ended up becoming the Secretary of Defense under George W. Bush, got us into Iraq, the whole situation. But back in the 70s, before Donald Rumsfeld became the Secretary of Defense, he was the director of the Office of Economic Opportunity under the Nixon administration. And he was talking to Nixon. He was trying to get a job in the federal government, something in foreign policy, something in trade, because everybody who comes from Congress is always trying to move up. People in Congress, they want to get a job in the federal government. They want to get a job in the executive branch because it gives them more influence over policy. They're in the cabinet. They're in the Department of Defense or on the National Security Council. They get to talk to the president. They have a lot more influence over government policy, over the administration's policies. So a lot of people in Congress, in Senate, in the House, try to move their way up to the Secretary of Defense, National Security, domestic policy, whatever, right? Gives them more control, gives them more power. So Donald Rumsfeld is trying to get a job as an emissary to Latin America. He's trying to get a job as an ambassador to Japan. He's trying to get a job in reconstruction of post-Vietnam. And he's talking to Nixon on the phone, and Nixon's like, look, man, if you want to get a job in foreign policy, there's only a few places that actually matter. Japan, China, Russia, Europe, and the United States. But when you really boil it down, it is, besides the United States, Japan, China, Russia, and Europe, okay? Those are the 4 places that actually matter. Nobody cares about the Middle East. Nobody cares about Latin America. Nobody cares about Africa. Well, let me rephrase that. People care about the Middle East, but it's radioactive for any politician, all right? So you want your resume to be clean. You want your resume to look good. You don't want to have all this egg on your face with this bad situation, this project that you were overseeing under the Nixon administration or another conservative administration, and you're tied to genocide in the Middle East or genocide in Africa someplace. So if you really want to have a strong resume in foreign policy, in the executive branch, the places that you want to focus on, the places where you want to get positions are in Japan, China, Russia, and Europe. That's what Nixon said. And so my thing is this. The only places that matter are those 4 places. And the United States has benefited from a kind of world order. And if Japan, Russia, China, and the United States are overseeing that world order, I think that's totally fine. My thing is we should be more focused on cooperating with China. China is an ancient civilization. They have billions of people. They are on the border of the South China, East China Sea. They have access to all these shipping routes, trade routes, incredibly economically productive country. And Russia, huge country, vast natural resources, vast rare earths, vast reserves of oil. Same with China. China doesn't have oil, but they have vast rare earths. Huge countries, big populations, both border water, both border oceans. And They're directly adjacent to Europe and Asia. So these countries are incredibly powerful countries, and trying to suppress them doesn't even make sense. They are going to naturally ascend one way or another. All this overly aggressive foreign policy, NATO expansion, defending Taiwan, trying to block China from creating this orbit in East Asia, it's insane. My thing is, we should actually be instrumentalizing China, instrumentalizing Russia to oversee these foreign affairs, and then sign bilateral, multilateral trade deals that are in our favor, that benefit us. Baseline tariffs, multilateral, bilateral trade deals, and then focus on reshoring and manufacturing in the United States. And that is effectively the focus. China is going to rise one way or another. As I said, connected to the ocean, big population, vast reserves of minerals. Same with Russia. And then, of course, we have China or Japan and Europe. Those are both traditional allies. These are the powerhouses of the globe effectively. So how about we focus on cooperating with them and stopping the other 180 countries from challenging us? We have our orbit in the Western Hemisphere. Russia has their orbit in Eastern Europe and parts of Central Europe and Asia. Same thing with China, same thing with Japan, and we focus on our problems here. Instead of continuing to funnel more money into the military-industrial complex, why don't we focus our energy and resources here? Because if we do that, we can take from the military budget and we can focus on crime, we can focus on infrastructure, we can focus on immigration, which is a huge problem. That's what we should be doing. Fighting China to defend Taiwan? I mean, look, you can make a case. Defending Taiwan, it makes sense. Taiwan they produce 60% of the world's semiconductors, 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors, 3 nanometers, 2 nanometers, you get the idea. And I think, look, we should defend Taiwan. It is a strategically vital country. But we should not go to war over Taiwan under any circumstances. No way. If worse comes to worse, if push comes to shove, just bomb TSMC. Just bomb it. Just blow it up. So that China doesn't have the ability to acquire it. But we should not be spending all our resources, all our money, all of our assets, military assets, and fighting against China, fighting against a country that is inevitably going to rise, fighting China, fighting in the Middle East, fighting Russia. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. There is a way to preserve a kind of world order in which the United States is still a very powerful and influential country without trying to squeeze the neck of all these other countries. That's my opinion. And like Nixon said, these are the only countries that matter. Nobody cares about Latin America. Nobody cares about Africa. Middle East is radioactive. Let's focus on cooperation amongst these 5 places, including the United States, and pull back on the empire a little bit. It's ridiculously expensive. The military is like 13% of the federal budget. Let's focus on reforming Social Security, reforming Medicare, reforming Medicaid. I'm not saying that we should abolish it. I'm saying reforming it. Because it is an infinite drain on our country's resources. And my thing is, look, we need to focus on the population. We need to focus on the people here. We need to focus on the crime in Chicago. We need to focus on the collapsing infrastructure. We need to focus on the illegal immigrants. Because at the end of the day, what's keeping me up at night is not the Middle East. It's not China. It's not Russia. That's a distraction from the media. What's keeping me up at night is worrying about whether or not, whenever I leave my parents' house, I'll be able to afford rent. I'll be able to afford utilities. Whenever I want to buy a house, the housing market isn't going to be wildly overpriced. Whenever I want to have a family, I'll be able to afford having a family. Whenever I want to send my kid to school, it's not going to burn my pockets. Whenever I graduate, my degree is going to get me a decent job. Those are the things that keep Americans up at night. It's not Hezbollah. It's not China. It's not Russia. Those are not the things that keep us up at night. Find a way to establish an order where we don't have to be the strongest country on earth. We can establish a kind of understanding, a cooperation. Okay, we are the 5 superpowers on earth. Let's cooperate. Let's suppress other countries. Let's focus on our spheres of influence. And we can work it that way. Because we have all kinds of problems here. And for me, at the end of the day, I am not ideologically conservative. I'm not ideologically leftist. I'm not a Democrat or Republican. Because we fundamentally understand something as Americans, especially with everything that has happened in the past 2 years, with the deportations of anti-Semites and everything else that's happened, Epstein, the list goes on. We understand fundamentally that the Republican and the Democratic Party are both corrupt institutions fundamentally. They're corrupt. They are illegitimate. They do not have our best interests at heart. Of course, the Republicans want power. Of course, the Democrats want power. All right. Sorry about that. Mic cut out. Computer died. But as I was saying, both parties are fundamentally corrupt institutions. The Republican Party is corrupt. The Democratic Party is corrupt. This should not come as a surprise to anybody. You can go all the way back to Watergate. You can go all the way back to Pizzagate, Benghazi. You can go back to the Epstein files, 9/11, the 9/11 report, the 9/11 commission, the cover-up, George Bush, Iraq war. You get the idea. We understand that Washington, D.C. has been sacked by private interests in much the same way that Rome was sacked by the Visigoths. Our capital is private sector and Israeli-occupied territory. That's just the situation we're in. We come last. The American people come last. And for me, I do not care about the Republican establishment. I don't care about the Democrat establishment. I care about one thing and one thing only on this channel. My channel, The Sovereign State, is dedicated to one thing only: the prosperity of the nation and its people. It is that simple. It is really that simple. And the point I was basically trying to make is, look, I would prefer to live in a world in which power is distributed amongst great powers rather than we fight with other great powers. Russia, China, Europe, Japan, and the United States, we can all run the world, have our own spheres of influence, and yes, we might face some temporary setbacks. We might face some temporary price increases due to loss of control or dominance over supply chains or de-dollarization. But long term, looking forward, I think a healthier and more stable world order will be one in which power is evenly distributed amongst 4 or 5 world powers. I think that's infinitely better. And we can reel back on the empire, we can reel back on overextension, and we can focus on things that are actually important while helping allies from a distance, helping allies from afar. Not saying we shouldn't help other countries. I'm not saying we should abandon other countries. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying we need to focus on ourselves and help others second. It's that simple. Which is to say that, look, Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan, they're not that fundamentally important to me and to us. Like I said, the things that keep me up at night are things that pertain to my life, not Hezbollah, not Russia, not China. Anyways, last thing I want to say before I end the show. First, I want to say condolences to the victims of the mass shooting in Minnesota today. If you guys aren't aware, there was I don't know if this guy was a teenager. Some people are saying it's a trans woman. I don't know. That's not confirmed yet. Excuse me. Apologies. Some people are saying he's a trans woman. I don't know the details. I don't know if that's even confirmed. That could all be conjecture. It could all be people just speculating. But he went into a church or a Catholic school, and he opened fire, killed 2 children, injured 17. And this is another fundamental problem. This is why I think we need to focus really primarily on domestic problems. We have had I think, 434 mass shootings in the United States since 1990. Okay, 434. Matter of fact, I have a Substack article here from Charlie Sykes. I'm going to read from it because it's ridiculous. By the way, Charlie Sykes is one of my favorite conservative political commentators. He's not a big Trump guy, but he's definitely intelligent. So this is what he says. He says, the shooting at Sandy Hook broke me. So fair warning, this is a rage post that will absolutely not end with a call for thoughts and prayers. By one count, there have now been 434 school shootings since the 1999 massacre at Columbine. Since then, more than 397,000 children have experienced gun violence at school. At least 218 children, teachers, and others have been killed. Another 510 were wounded. Point being, gun violence in our society is a major problem. Now, I'm not saying the government should come to everybody's house and confiscate everybody's guns. That's not what I'm saying. And to be honest with you, I don't even know what the perfect solution to this problem is. But the truth is, it is a problem nonetheless. Gun violence in our society is absolutely wild. There was a guy who killed, I think he killed like 3 or 4 people at some office building in New York City like a month ago. He was mad about the NFL, allowing people to play because it causes CTE or whatever, and he goes in, he opens fire, kills like 3 or 4 people. And this has kind of become a common recurrence in our society. And it, quite frankly, is just inexcusable. It really just is inexcusable. People will die on the hill that their guns and the Second Amendment and their right to bear arms is the only thing that keeps them safe. And I think that's a lazy way of thinking. There are other ways to keep people safe from gun violence. You can regulate the way guns are sold. You can add more stringent background checks. There's definitely other ways. You can punish people more heavily for having certain augments on their weapons. There's things that you can do. But there are absolutely no reasons as to why somebody should be able to just walk into a school in the middle of the day and kill people with a gun. That is insane. That is actually wild to me. It's like, what's the solution here? More taxpayer money to the police to defend all these schools, or do we do something about the guns? Something's got to give because it's getting ridiculous. My thing is, look, I think people should have the right to own a weapon. I really do. People should have the right to defend themselves. But at the same time, do we really want to live in a society in which it is necessary to have a gun on you at all times? Do we really want to live like that? Why do we have to live like that? Why should we have to live like that? In fear, in terror, in anxiety, in worry, all the time. Because we don't know if some lunatic who's politically motivated might drive around the corner one night or walk into a nightclub in New York City or in Chicago or in Houston or go to school in Minneapolis and just start unloading on a crowd of people. It's ridiculous. There has to be a solution. There has to be a way. And I'm not trying to spin a political narrative about this. I'm just giving my honest, raw, unfiltered thoughts about gun violence in this country as a whole, because it's getting ridiculous. It's been ridiculous, but at some point, we got to do something. We can't keep living like this. The police are corrupt. They're not out to help us. They couldn't care less about us. There's all this red tape and bureaucracy. You got to file a report. They're apathetic most of the time. Criminals are just on the loose. It's just like, when does it end? Anyways, I don't want to monologue about that too long, but that's all I got to say about that. That being said, I appreciate you guys for watching this video. Thank you so much for your support. If you liked it, please like, please subscribe, leave a comment. And until further ado, I'm out. Cue the outro.